Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Today we have another free scrap buster project for you. There is no pattern with this one because it's basically just rectangle pieces, but I will post in the description of the video all the measurements that you need. Today we're going to be making a free coaster set. We're going to be making 4 scrappy coasters and I hope you enjoy them. You will need for this project some scraps of woven fabric. I am using my backstitch from last year's Christmas round and some scraps from some backstitch panels. You also need fusible fleece. I'm using thermolam because I prefer that to regular fleece, fusible fleece. So let's get started. You will need to cut 3 by 75 pieces of fusible fleece. These are square fusible fleece. They are 375 by 375 and you need 4 of them, and you set those aside for now. You will also need 4 backings for your coasters. Each of these is 4.25, so 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. Again, 4 squares. Super easy. Whatever fabric is your favorite, go ahead and cut that. This will be the back of the coaster. For the front of the coaster, because we want to make it a little bit different than just plain fabric, we're going to be doing like a miniature quilt. I'm not a quilter. This is like a scrappy quilt. So you're going to need 5 strips of fabric, and these are 125, so 1 1/4 by 17. They can you can mix and match them. You can do them all the same color. You can do like a rainbow color, whatever you want. I decided to go with this layout for my fabric, or maybe I'll do this. That's cute, right? So this will be my I think this will be my layout for the scrappy coasters. So again, 125 is the height and 17 inches is the length. No need to memorize anything from the video. As I said before, everything will be written down. So let's get started sewing. For this project, you will only be using your sewing machine and matching thread if you'd like. I'm using just white thread, so it's easier for me to show you. I laid out my strips as I would like them to be seen on the coaster, just so I don't forget. But again, it's you can choose whatever layout you prefer. And I'm taking my 2 strips, laying them right sides together, and I'm going to sew with 1/4 inch seam allowance along the long edge. It is important that you keep your seam allowance constant, or as best as you can. I'm again not a quilter. This is more of a scrappy project, but I do know the importance of keeping a constant seam allowance when quilting. So try your best. We are doing 1/4 inch for this project. You should backstitch, but it's not necessary because we're gonna end up cutting these long strips in 4 anyways. Now take your second section, lay it right sides together, and continue stitching. We are going to end up with a long strip of fabric after we attach all these strips. That is 425 by 17. repeat the same thing with the other strip. This is basically a project that will just involve straight stitching. Take your last strip. If you're using a directional print, make sure that it goes the same direction as your other one. I think I will make another set with rainbow colors. And these strips right here will yield 4 coasters. I might put the measurements in the description for individual coasters. If you want to make them all differently, that's fine too. I like batch sewing, so I prefer to do like long strips and then cut them. But I have no problem putting the individual measurements for the strips, and you do that times 4. And the last strip. Quarter of an inch seam allowance. And this is how your fabric should be looking right now. We're going to go ahead and give it a press, opening the seam allowances on the back. Don't skip pressing, you don't want to do that. It will lay much nicer and so much easier if it's pressed. So this is how it looks like right now. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a good press and come back and then cut my fabric in 4.25 intervals. So I'm going to mark 4.25, cut, then another 4.25, cut, then another 4.25, cut, and then the last one will be 4.25, so 4 1/4 length. I went ahead and pressed as best as I could. Don't stress. If you cannot get them all to stay open, just push them all towards one side. That's fine too. Ideally you want to press the seam allowances open. So now you want to go ahead and cut this in 4 by 25 pieces. So 4 by 25. This will make your 4 coasters. So right now you're going to start sewing individual coasters. You're not going to batch sew them anymore. And I'll do one example and they'll all be done in the exact same manner. So take your fusible fleece. Now it's the time to do that. And center your fusible fleece on the back and fuse it. It will be, since the fusible fleece is 375, you will have 1/4 inch seam allowance around the fusible fleece, around all edges. So go ahead and fuse that with your iron. If you do use your iron, make sure you use a pressing cloth or with your heat press, and come right back so we can finish our first coaster. Your main the front part of your coaster is now ready. Your fusible fleece is attached to the back. This is how it looks like. So what you want to do right now is take one of your backing options. Make sure if it's a directional print, you lay it on the same direction. Lay it right sides together and sew with 1/4 inch seam allowance all around, leaving an opening on one of the sides. So I'm going to start from this side, about an inch away from the corner. Pivot. I know quilting is a very precise sport. That's why I'm not a fan of quilting. This is probably the most quilting I will ever do. 5 strips. But I love the way this looks. Love, love, love the way this coaster looks. And I find square coaster to be much easier and look much more polished than round coasters, because I wanted to show you guys a round coaster, but I wasn't a fan of how the stitching looks on the round if it's not perfect. So a square coaster, I feel like it's much nicer and it's an easier scrap busting project. The stitching is done all around. So I have sewn this pivot, this side, and a little bit here. So now you want to go ahead and clip your corners on the diagonal as close as you can get it to the stitching without cutting it. This will help make sure that you have nice crisp corners. And you want to turn your... My camera seems to love Mr. Prickle and wants to focus just on him. I keep watching the screen and it shows how it's trying to focus on Mr. Prickles. Push your corners out using your favorite pushing tool. This is from one of those old Cricut sets. It's like a boning corner thing pusher. Very professional of me. So now that they're all pushed out, all you have left to do is top stitch. And while you're top stitching, you're also going to be enclosing the seam. The raw edge, you'll also be closing that. And we're going to top stitch around with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Obviously you can match your thread if you want. I don't want to do that. And that's it. You're going to be repeating this step that I've just done right now. You're going to be repeating that for the other 3 remaining coasters. They're already cut. You just have to put the fleece interfacing, sew right sides together, leaving an opening, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance throughout this whole project, and that's it. You have yourself a brand new set of washable, reusable, beautiful, custom-made coasters. The finish measurement is 375 by 375, which I found to be perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a good press, and this is number 1 of the 4 coasters. I can't wait to see your fabric choices for your coasters. And this, along with the other projects that I've linked in the comments, are part of the big Backstitch Backroom Christmas in July event. This project will also have its own price, and if you do complete this project and you follow the rules in the Backstitch Backroom on Facebook, link in the comments too, you are eligible for a big prize at the end, as well as a prize for this specific sew along. I hope you enjoy your new coasters, and I'll see you back here in the next one. Bye!